All right, episode 74. Today we're going to talk about how to find and train new team members. We're going to go ahead and get started right now.
Welcome to the only real estate podcast worth listening to, with your hosts Nick Good, Matt Kelderman, and Brian Force. Combined, they have 26 years of experience and have sold over 1,500 homes. Join them each week as they bring you everything you need to know about real estate. And now, here are your hosts, Nick, Matt, and Brian.
All right, episode 74. Today, we're going to talk about how to find and train new team members, right? But before we get started down that rabbit hole, if this is your first time listening, go over to iTunes. Please subscribe to that. Or if you're listening on Spotify, make sure you hit that subscribe button. On iTunes, leave us that review, please.
Please.
Leave it. I haven't seen any new ones lately, so.
I did. I don't want to throw this out there. You know, this podcast we started in that garage a couple years ago has more reviews on iTunes than the Lab Coats Agents podcast, which I don't want to try and start a turf war or anything. I'm just talking analytics here. Yeah, I'm just putting data out there. You guys do with that what you want.
I think they have a little more their clout in their Facebook group. So speaking of Facebook group, if you're not part of the only real estate group worth being a part of, go over there. It's on Facebook. Request access. And then if you're wanting to take 10 plus listings every single month, we're at 109 listings taken year to date so far.
Nice.
And if you want to learn how you can do that, just like the Her Group DFW, go over to touracademy.com/take10. Sign up for the 10 plus every single 10 plus listings every single month webinar, and then you'll be prompted to sign up for Tour Academy for $1.
Can I tell you guys about a personal crisis I'm having right now? Just start the show off with like laying a baseline for how I'm feeling right now. I was playing in a kickball league earlier this week.
By the way, you were. I
was unleashed.
Yes, because
after my 5-year suspension.
I thought it was an indefinite suspension.
I think they probably thought it would be like if they feel like in a recreational kickball league. I think if they just ban you for 5 years, you're never going to come back. Well, they fucking thought wrong. So anyway, my first game back, I kind of tweaked my quad running to first base. So I put some biofreeze a little earlier today, right in this area. About an hour ago.
I'm not looking down.
Which is, if you are a gentleman, very difficult to get it just on that spot of the inner thigh without getting on some other stuff.
It's terrible.
And so that happened. So I'm dealing with that right now. So if I start crying at any point during this podcast, understand it's not because I'm emotional. It's because I'm in an intense amount of pain. Because that is some stuff you don't want touching your other stuff.
But let's talk about the kickball, right? I mean, how did it go last night?
I was 3 for 4 with 4 RBIs and a double on a bunt, which is kind of my signature move.
So never missed a beat. Just
never missed a beat.
5-year hiatus.
So here's my deal. Kickball is incredibly easy if you know the strategy, right? Like I already know if we're playing rec league, like your ability to get the ball to first base in a hurry is going to be pretty limited. So my strategy is usually to bunt and just wait for you to overthrow first base. I'm going to take a few bags. And if that doesn't happen, I'm still going to beat you to first base, so I'll look like an idiot just bunting all the time. But I've bunted for inside the park home runs. I have 2 records in this league. I've bunted for an inside the park home run, and I've turned an unassisted triple play, both of which are almost impossible.
Well, the third thing is the 5-year suspension.
Yeah. I also took off my skate and tried to stab somebody. No one's ever done that before.
Nice reference. Yeah, I like that one.
All right, talk amongst yourselves. I got in trouble for drinking on the show, so I got to find a cup.
Yep. So, Justin Nelson wants to talk about how COVID got started.
I had commented already.
Did you?
He did it. He did it. Yeah, he did it. It was Justin. I don't know why he thought he should take it to Nashville and run over there with his COVID, but no, we're not talking about how COVID got started. What the hell?
No, I really want to, bring up, because this is something that I asked earlier in the only real estate group worth being a part of. I'm getting some amazing answers on it, by the way, of what are your lead sources basically to find talented team members?
Right.
Seems like everyone is just throwing some great sources out there.
It's funny that before you even asked that question, and you know what, I am a part of Lab Coat Agents, and I did go to their group. And Brad Kiger, an agent who posts a lot in there, who I've never met in person, but I respect the stuff he throws out, put a and I would like for anybody who I would like for this to actually to kind of jump off in the comment section a little bit if anybody has any feelings on it, because I see it from both sides. But anyways, he posted that he was going to be doing live recruiting calls, and he from sometime to sometime today, and he wanted people to like come on and just give him some feedback or whatever. And one person, of course, who didn't fully decipher what he was writing, like jumped in and was like, "Please don't do the calls. Producing real estate agents get enough calls all day long between title companies and lenders and ADT people and all this other stuff." And first off, I thought the commenter was stupid. Like from what he was attempting to say. I understood what his point was, but he was acting like he was just so overwhelmed with unsolicited phone calls that he just can't even handle it.
Ringing.
I'm just not buying that. I sell a lot of real estate. I managed to get through my day without like getting bogged down in unsolicited phone calls. Like I just think that's a stupid thing and a stupid reason to not ask what I call you. But I thought it did bring up a really good question about how do you go about connecting those people? Because we've all done it the cold calling everybody way, and then the focusing on people with lunches type of way. And, it's just, I think it's a different vibe for each person.
It's funny because it's kind of for me the same way as we talked before about sometimes it feels like one day you turn around and you've kind of look back at your business and you're like, kind of, how did we get here a little bit? Because like I'm still interested in how Nick generates leads, right? Like that never goes away. I think it's kind of the same thing with, with finding team members and talent and things like that. It kind of comes from everywhere. And there's things that we focus on, but there's also some stuff that works really well for other people that I would just never do, So part of this is that there's nothing that we're going to say on here that's going to be a catch-all, I think, for everyone or everything. I think that what we can do is lay out some guidelines and some simple rules and some simple principles to really help people find and train the right pieces of talent. And then you kind of fill in the blanks with how your approach is kind of based on what your strengths are.
No, absolutely. And the number one thing is I mean, the training definitely needs to be there.
Sure.
I think the downfall to every team that gets started, one is I think an agent that is starting out a team, and this is a little bit off topic of it, but they truly weren't ready to start one. Right?
That's a good question. So, and elaborate on that, because that's kind of where I wanted to start with this is, when do you know it's the right time to start a team? And don't give me the millionaire real estate agent.
In my opinion, I think you're ready to start a team when you no longer feel the need to cherry pick leads. So I've run across a lot of teams where actually team members have joined our team.
Yeah.
And because they're the previous company or previous team that they were on.
Yep.
They were competing against their team leader.
Yep.
And what did the team leader do? The team leader is going to get the best of the best, and then they're just throwing the scraps. And the team leader's like, "Oh, everything's going great." And then they've got their agents who are struggling.
Sure.
Right? And my opinion of really when it's time to start a team is when you have an overabundance of lead flow, right?
Right.
And you can maybe even hand off some of your leads. I mean, I'll tell you right now, my parents bought a house through one of my agents.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how you know you're handing off leads.
Yeah,
You hand off
exactly.
mom.
Hand off mom.
Yeah,
right?
my grandfather
Sure.
used Elizabeth to sell and buy.
So I would say, if I had to draw like a baseline for it, the not having to cherry pick leads thing I think is huge, because that can really create a lot of tension. I would say the right time to start a team is when you are able to replicate the mechanisms that made you successful. And what I mean by that is I've seen a lot of people that are very heavily sphere-based, okay, that take care of their own clients very well, and they maybe do 12, 15, even $20 million a year, but they have that tight-knit group, that sphere, that's really where their sources are. It's very hard to scale that to build a team, because those people really want to work with you. It's hard to sort of, right? So like I think a way to replicate what you're doing for other people is a necessity to build a team. And usually that's either mechanisms that allow them to plug in better with their own sphere, which is something that we do around here, I think, at a high level, mechanisms to generate more leads in business for them to develop a bigger pipeline and stuff like that, and have the infrastructure around it to support them. Like the idea that it's like kind of the millionaire real estate agent approach, which is basically like, well, whenever you can't service your own leads, bring in somebody else. I think that's true, But you can also create a predictable amount of leads, and if you build the systems around them, you can feed pretty much anybody with that. So,
well, and it's understanding how to convert them, right?
Sure.
They're if look, I built my business. It's you've heard the story a million times, I'm sure, but I'll tell it a quick synopsis of it again. But it is 24 years old. My friends weren't buying from me; they were broke.
Yeah.
My friends' parents, I was their broke college kid's friend. They weren't buying from me.
Weren't
using me,
Yeah.
right? And so what did I have to do? I had to go to learn from the cold lead generation method.
Right.
And I didn't want to, at the time, and even today, I still don't want to feel like I'm calling my sphere and being like, hey, do you happen to know anybody thinking about buying or selling?
Right.
I want them to use me because they see me as a successful,
Sure.
in the real estate industry, successful,
Yep.
and they're seeing the results that we're getting.
Yep.
Right? And so, the cold lead generation model, that is easily duplicatable and replicatable,
Yes.
and you can make it replicatable,
Yep.
right? To where you should have someone come in and plug and play, and then help tweak their,
Right.
what they're saying, their tonality. The presentations can be very similar, but all they have to do is sit in. They know, right? They've got to make the phone calls, the text messages, etc. And within every 100 to 150, dials or contacts, whatever, then they should be getting a deal.
And then that's where the training aspect just comes
Correct.
in. Right.
It's funny how like Nick's career started the same way as mine under the same pretext. Like I was a bartender. The people I worked with were not buying houses. The sphere I had were not people who were going to be like, yeah, sure, I'm going to go buy a house from my bartender, right? Like, but I think one of the main things that I didn't realize like initially was that you immediately jumped into a system that could be replicated. I just went off my sheer personality, and I think one, maybe there's a lot of other reasons, but you were able to start a team much, much faster than I was ever able to start a team. Because the reality is like, I could never train anybody to do stuff the way I did. It's why Brian and I ultimately ended up partnering. Like, I could never replicate any of this stuff. Even when I was, we've never really told the whole story of the Herg transition, but came into Herg as attempting to be the CEO and run the whole thing. And what I really quickly realized when I hired 14 people my first year and one of them was left at the end of that first year was like, I couldn't skill people up that couldn't do it exactly like me because I didn't have all the things that you're talking about, right?
Well, and here's the thing: is what you were trying to train on was something that is you can't train that, right?
Yep.
You can't train me to be as relational as you are, right? That's just who your personality style is.
Right.
That's your bartending experience, your service industry experience, which I didn't have, right? But what we can train on is everyone should be able to talk, at least speak English. Like Brian says, if you can speak English,
type on computers,
right, and type, not even that.
Yeah, you can probably get around that.
If you've seen how I type, if you notice, like a lot of times,
I just imagine it's like a barbarian.
No, I actually
just
type very
slamming the keyboard.
Absolutely not. But
little sausage fingers just smacking buttons.
I'm actually really good. Here's my problem though: is I skip words because I think it's already on there.
Okay, yeah.
And so it doesn't always.
That's
flow.
a high D personality thing because I do it all the time.
And I don't proofread, right? But the
if you ever read the Tour Academy blog, you'll see it's written by somebody who was in a very big hurry to get it done.
But that's the main thing with this is can somebody come in? Can you have a veteran and a brand new agent come in and have very similar successes?
Right. Sure. Well, to that point, and I think that's maybe where to jump into where to find those people is that should be your goal, right? Your goal as a team leader should be to be able to partner with people who are already veterans and provide them with the opportunity and leverage to hit their goals, whatever they are. And you're going to find, that the veteran people that have their goals widely vary. Their goals vary widely, right? Kelderman, I think his goal when we first started this, or even when he first started this, was not so much more leads, more this, more that. It was, how do I continue to grow my business and actually have like a life and not do all of this crap on my own because I hate 80% of the stuff that I'm doing and I just want to sell houses, right? And that's for most of our really big time producers in our business. That's what they want. It's more the leverage that we provide them, and it's more of a lifestyle thing, and it's just the ability to let them be them, right? Let Manny be Manny and just take everything else off of everybody's plate. But you want the ability to grow people into that as well, and that's why you really need the infrastructure and the ability to provide leads and nurturing and training and guidance and coaching to people that are brand new as well. And that's sort of what we've strided to do here.
Well, it's what I commented on Nick's comment in the group today too. I think it depends on where somebody's at in their career. I can always tell when Brian and I are talking to new agents, I can tell exactly where they're at in their career. And I'll tell you right now, if you're coming to us, talking to us about the amount of leads we're going to give you in the commission splits, I would just tell you haven't sold enough real estate to understand what you're trying to really get away from by joining a team. Yeah. Because here's the thing is, those two things, most teams aren't going to be able to match what you could do on your own. What we're going to teach you how to do is all the stuff that you and I both freaking know. I know specifically from experience that you're not ever going to get to. Yeah. You dream big, and I'm not saying there aren't the 1% out there who are going to do all of that, right? But for the most part, most agents do need some structure. The world has trained us to have a structure. I work 2 weeks, sir. Give me my money for these 2 weeks, right? When we move into entrepreneurship, it's a totally alien thing for most people. So we still need that. I was at a point where, one, I was tired of making so much money and being so broke, right? Like that was the main thing, because I wasn't spending any of my money efficiently in my business, and I was trying to get myself out of my business, which isn't even what I wanted anyways, right? To ultimately find myself here where now I can move 45, 50 units a year with relative ease, right? Like, and with real hardcore lead generation that I tell everybody else to do, right? You're talking about 75, 80 units a year. And if there's anybody who says they don't want a business like that, I'm calling bullshit all day long.
Well, they say they don't want to. They say they don't want it because they think of how much work it's going to take, but they don't understand the team leverage.
And that's where the team. And that's when people have the splits conversation. I like them to at least compare it to what they would be doing in any other industry in the corporate world at all, right? Like when agents are like, oh, I don't want to give up that much or whatever. Like if you went to work for Ericsson, let's just say, and you worked as a CPA or whatever, do you think that Ericsson is giving you a 1-for-1 return on your like time and energy and labor that you're putting in? Like, let's just say they pay you $75,000 a year to be a CPA at Ericsson. Do you think that Ericsson is making $0 on the $75,000 that they're paying you, or do they think that you're probably worth $200,000 or $150,000 or $100,000 or whatever, and they're paying $75,000 of that and then handling the infrastructure so you don't have to go build your own CPA business? Because they've already built an awesome business and now they can pay you to do it, right? If you think anywhere in the corporate world you're getting paid 100% of what your output is, you're a maniac, because businesses wouldn't work if they did that.
Well, and it's the same thing if you don't know this about real estate, and if you're an experienced agent, you already do. It's the same conversation you have with sellers when they want to get they want to get full market value for their house that needs a remodel. Why in the world is somebody going to pay you an amount of money that gets them back the exact same amount of money at the end of the day? Like that's asinine. Nobody would do that. Right?
If you put $30,000 into it, it's worth $400,000. So I think $370 is good.
Yeah, so go put $30,000 into it and sell it yourself, dummy.
But let's talk about where, for your team, Brian had a team before partnering up with Matt. Sure. Where was your first team member hire? Where did that come from? So what were your lead sources?
So this is perfect. And I want to talk about what I did and then also kind of lay out the principles, because I think that this approach, the actual vessel that you use to find people is different than the simple rules that you follow, I think. So my first couple of hires when I was building my own team, or my first couple of business partners, were people that I had coached whenever I was in leadership. So I used to be in leadership at Keller Williams for a long time as well. I was a group coach. I did individual coaching, all that type of stuff. And through the relationships that I had built, that's where my first few team members came from. Just people that I had already coached in the past that were struggling to kind of build things on their own, but I thought were talented, and we partnered up. And that's sort of been, and so to lay out some principles, that's sort of been an underlying sort of rule that Matt and I have always followed in our recruiting efforts, is come from contribution and don't expect anything. And if I swear to God, if you do that, it sounds so hokey and it sounds so like, personal self-help book or whatever, but I promise you that Zig Ziglar adage is true. If you just come from contribution and help other people, it is amazing how it will show up in your life. Matt and I's biggest, I would say that the biggest avenue that we meet more people in real estate that we eventually partner with than any other way is just doing free live events where we literally spend 3 hours just talking about everything that we do in our business. And we do them all the time, not so much in the COVID era.
So let's talk about, how do you make it COVID proof?
Fucking, you can tell me, bro. You.
I will tell you this is an area of opportunity for us, and I think it's cool to have these on here. We did one webinar. Yeah. Neither of us were super happy with how it kind of went down, and we just didn't put any more action to it, right? Like, again, I part of it is too with the size of our team. We have team members who are bringing us people they talk to. There's a little bit of that where you have an opportunity to talk to some people just because of we're a little bit bigger now. Yeah. But we haven't put any action to that. It's funny because Nick knows this story. I've told him a million times, and I've told him this show before. But Nick is exactly what you and I do now. He did that exact same thing for me when I was being recruited by KW. I got to go to family reunion in 2016 in New Orleans, and very candidly, anybody who was on that trip knows I didn't go to a single breakout at all. First, it was my first time in New Orleans.
Hell yeah, dude.
You know, so whatever. But one of those nights, Nick had sat there and and it continued on after that. But the way he was willing to share what he was doing at the time, like one in my foolish mind, and it's the same thing I think now. People are like, why are they telling me everything they're doing? And the reality is because not that he thought I was incapable, but the sheer stuff you have to have in place to replicate some of these things it's not built overnight, right? There's a whole lot of breaking and things that have to be figured out. So he wasn't sharing any trade secrets with me that I could go immediately rip off, right? But what he was doing is he was just showing me this space where it was like, all these things are possible, and this guy kind of knows how to do it, and he's willing to share, right?
Yeah.
Now, he's probably had that conversation with a million people. I don't know many of them are still in his life 4 years later he does a podcast with. Probably not many, since there's 3 of us.
And I don't see anybody else here.
Right? So like that's a little bit different, but at the same time, I think that's part of the reason why it works. Part of the reason why building a team and leveling up works is because everything around you levels up, and shit does just get a little bit. Other stuff gets harder. Some stuff gets a little bit easier.
100%.
Right?
And so as far as taking that, you're 100% right. And to take that to actionable advice, that could manifest itself in a lot of different ways. I'll tell you, for me personally, the reason that I love doing the live events is because I have severe social anxiety in a one-on-one setting, right? Like, a lot of people out there, their best recruiting method might just be taking people to lunch and just seeing what they could do for their business and help them. For me, if I don't know you very intimately, sitting across from a lunch table from you makes me want to stab myself in the eye with a fork so I can just get out of that. It's terrifying to me, right? But I like having my support of my right-hand man here and doing it in front of 60 people, and you don't have that, pressure of the one-on-one conversation or whatever. It's worked very well for us. For other people, you might just be looking at, like, if you've been in the business for a while enough to build a team, you probably know a whole lot of agents. You may just start a lead generation tactic where you just see how many coffee dates with other business owners you can have every week with no pressure whatsoever. Don't recruit them. I think that's the biggest thing. Stop trying to recruit and start trying to help people. Yeah. And if you do that, I promise you good things will happen to you.
So I just wrote out quickly, just right now while you were talking, right? Lead sources that I could think of at the top of my head, right? So let me quickly go over them, see if we can add to it.
Okay.
Right? One, to make this a super valuable podcast that people will leave us iTunes reviews over. So if you're listening to us on iTunes, please leave us that review. Number one, and this is probably the easiest place for all of us to get team members, is your current brokerage that you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
I got stopped to ask doing that when I was on my own. I just used to train, and I would just talk about what we were doing. Right? It wasn't even the MC was right. I shouldn't have been doing it. I wasn't bringing people on and adding to them. Right? They were leaving the whole damn brokerage.
And the MC stands for Market Center.
Yeah. Well, and it's having that conversation with your brokerage up front, because here's what I'll tell you, and you can attest this from being in leadership. Every brokerage has a pretty big churn.
Yep.
They're not going to like you actively trying to take people away from being like fully single agents, but I guarantee you they'd rather keep people than lose them. So they're going to help you if you kind of have your at-risk people, you know what I mean, that really need some help. Your brokerage will be begging you to help take them on.
That's the better conversation. That was where I made a mistake maybe that's the learning experience to bring value to this podcast. Don't make the mistake I made.
Yeah.
Not have a conversation with your brokerage about that. Go to them and sit down and have it. And again, I know this doesn't work at every single brokerage. Some of them are way more standoffish with agents, and I know everybody doesn't work as cohesively. I do feel very fortunate to be at a brokerage that does. That is very team friendly.
Yep.
and whatever. We have two of the top 4 expansionists in Keller Williams are on the same hallway.
Yeah.
Right. So cool. That part of it's great. So just go and have a conversation with them, because there are people that they might be able to point you to. Because I brought on people that, had I spoken to anybody about that person prior to bringing them on, I would have been able to avoid that pain and disappointment and all the stuff that comes with that, because you're stepping into something new. And if you're anything like me and you let that little failure bug start whispering in the back of your ear, when you have a few people leave you, that's a kick in the ass. It doesn't feel super good.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
But
bro.
you have to. That's something that's just
you have to deal with it,
right?
but you can avoid some of it by being a little bit diligent up front.
Sure. Right. And how you evolved into even the leadership, the style that you're in today, right?
Yeah.
You were probably a little too rough on them in the beginning, where you got a handhold.
Sure.
And the way that we looked at it when we were still aligned in Keller Williams, right? In fact, the same office was treating it like the way we would treat expired listings, and go to the team and say, look, we're needing team members to come join us. Who would be the right fit that you would be comfortable referring to us, right? And then let them know, because it's a little bit of a warmer handoff. And that definitely worked. I mean, for the longest time, from 2009 until really 2019, until up until the day that we left, primarily we were going and working with people that was already just at our current office. Sure. We weren't pulling over people from other brokerages, right? It's good and bad. It's from the downside, the brokerage had no upside for us, right? We were just kind of taking from their pool, their hard work. We weren't replenishing it with new agents. Sure. And it should be reciprocal.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Right.
So we've got live events we talked about a little bit, right? Your own brokerage we talked about a little bit.
So I've got
coming from contribution as an underlying sort of thing. I would add, and I don't know what else you have on there, and I want to go through it. I'll just add some right now because it's on the top of my head and I'll forget. Your own agents, as you start to build a team, should be one of your biggest sources of other team members.
So I have agent referrals.
There you go. Agents like to work with other people that they know, like, and trust, and have. Like, I'll tell you, some of our biggest killers on our team have come as a result of some of the other awesome people on our team, which has been super cool. You want to have an incentive for that. You want to incentivize that. But I will tell you, there's nothing that really binds people together like those personal connections. And having a whole bunch of strangers, I think that's one of the problems that we had in the beginning is nobody really knew each other when they came onto our team, right? Everybody kind of always felt like the new guy. We weren't great at building like that family environment, and I don't even know that we really put forth any effort into building, and I think we got lucky in that it happened organically because we connected with some of our agents really early on, and they were inspired to want to bring more people into that fold.
So that's the biggest thing, right? And there's way too many people who are like, no, I'm not hanging. I don't want to hang out with my team, right? And there may be some of that with certain people within your organization at times, but look, they're also here to help you build your business together, right? And that is one thing that we do in my opinion, we do a really good job on is we're a really tight knit crew.
Your culture kicks ass.
Yeah, and that's natural. That wasn't forced, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that we.
Who is it that says that like every two people that come into your business will have an effect on the culture? Like, what is that team? Is that a career visioning thing? I think it's a career visioning thing.
I don't know.
But yeah, it's one of the things. The bottom line is you will not be able to ever force your culture. It will happen. So find the right people to build the culture you want.
And here's the thing is in October when we did business planning of 17, I was already online to join with her. We were just waiting to roll everything out, right? And I remember talking to Seychelles Van Poel, who at the time and may still be was in Gary's top 100, and Adam is in Gary's top 100, right? So I didn't know him at the time. I was just asking a bunch of stuff, and somehow the conversation worked around to team culture, because I do think Van Poel, they do what they do at an insanely high level. Like, and they do everything. I mean, they are buttoned up, clean. Yeah. Like it's an organization, right? And she said that exact same thing you said about culture. She's like, there is not a single thing that you will do to influence that culture at all. No. At all. And I think we have to realize that pretty early on, that Nick said earlier, don't be too hard on yourself for the initial kind of failures and not knowing what's going on. Brian's point to having some systems in place that you can recruit to is huge. Yep. But then also understanding that at first this is going to be just like when you got into real estate. You are going to be so damn clueless on what to do and what to say to people and how to work it out. And you're going to try and force some things. I would just encourage you to let the people be who they are. People who are, Brian and I turned away a guy who another team we know actually hired because we did some due diligence and we're like, that's just not who we want to be aligned with, right? Yep. It was a great fit for maybe somebody else, but it wasn't for Brian and I. 9 months ago, that person was on our team, bro. Yeah,
100%.
That person was on the team.
That's the thing. You can't control the type of culture that comes about. You can control the I would say the core values of the people that you do hire, and trust that whatever culture starts to evolve, you're going to like what you've built, right? And that's something that I would encourage everybody in the beginning. The reality is we've only really turned a handful of people away, but the person that we recently turned away, I thought that was a good call. I will say that if looking back, if we had some do-overs, there's a whole lot of people that we ended up bringing on that did not stay with us that we probably would have turned away. Yeah.
And you probably knew. You probably knew at the time when you hired them. You probably knew at that entire time.
Sure.
That's something that that we all have that gut instinct,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
You're hiring them. It's almost like taking on a client. You're like, man, I know this one's going to be a headache, and you just do it. And so Chauncey Pham commented on here. Her hashtag Connect for Real was her campaign for that, for recruiting, and it worked really well. No expectations, but lots of exposure and free value.
Sure.
Right, and look, she's killing it in EXP. In terms
I mean,
of
I would be honest with you. Chauncey is a great example, right? When Chauncey was running her an individual brokerage, she's somebody that we all know really well personally, and she's come in a lot of ways your business partner over at EXP. But even before that, she met with Matt and I. She sat down with you and just talked about how we might be able to do business together, or whatever, and we're still all fantastic friends. There was nothing asked of anybody. We was just kind of building relationships and deepening them and just finding ways to make things work together. You
talk about how like that, just connecting with you guys, talking about some of the best ways to recruit agents, just have your agents like talk to them. This is Chauncey is a perfect example of that. Chauncey and I did a deal together in Rowlett.
Yep.
That was kind of a bit of an S show on the title side. Chauncey and I got along great. It was a smooth transaction. She, because I'm very, very poor at this, kept the relationship going initially, reached out, and I think we went to coffee or did something.
Sure.
Right? We met somewhere outside the transaction and hung out. And then ultimately ended up pushing, she did the Connect for Real thing. We had lunch for that. She was hashtagging it everywhere. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Right? And then she's doing that with a ton of people. She obviously watches the podcast with us. She's been on the show now. Like now she's like a legit part of our world, and it all came from just us talking after a transaction.
We had a mastermind on Monday that I was scribbling notes like a mother effer.
Yeah,
dude.
exactly.
So that's
how that stuff grows, man.
Yeah, so she's part of Tour Academy.
Yep.
Right. So came from huge contributions. So if
Yeah.
you want to be a part of Tour Academy, look, just at least be a part of it for the twice a month mastermind.
I'm gonna tell y'all, I don't care if no one ever joins Tour Academy again. We'll keep it going forever because I'm getting more out of it than anybody.
Yeah, right. So again, we talked about the live events, which I had live events / new agent workshop.
There you go.
We can almost call that also a career night.
That's so people do some of the career night stuff. I think career night's a little bit more brokerage heavy sometimes, but it's up to you.
It can be, but why does it have to be?
It doesn't have to
Right.
be.
I guarantee you that during, again, non-COVID situations, we could very easily have a career night twice a month in the training room down the hall at 6 p.m.
I think the caveat is if you're just starting a team, career night is not the way to go because you will get people that are not even in real estate yet.
Agreed.
And you need to build the systems ahead of time to really handle that.
So a little hack for that.
But it can't. Okay.
So a little hack. So do it. By the way, your brokerage right now is offering career night on Zoom.
I didn't know that.
Sure.
Yep. I'll send you the screenshot.
I'll be 100% honest. We were like, we won a ton of awards yesterday at the mid-year awards, and I missed that too because I forgot. So I need to get more plugged in.
Did I win any?
You might have won some too.
But for a little hack for that though is go to realestateexpress.com.
Yeah.
Right. Set up an affiliate link.
Boom. We were just talking about this with Javier yesterday.
Set up an affiliate link. That way, it can actually pay and be another form of getting new agents in.
Yep.
Right. And then when they sign up for Real Estate School through Real Estate Express, you get portion of that money. I think it's like $90 every sign up.
Okay.
Right.
That's
so not bad.
super good, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. And then from there, then you can then go and run that money for maybe retargeting ads. So I have Craigslist. Right.
Okay.
Now I used to use Craigslist a lot more.
Sure.
It seems like
I think everybody did.
Yeah, but that one when they started charging for the employment section started to slow down.
Yeah. Sure.
Facebook ads. I've seen people do somewhat
Facebook
decently
ads
well
have
with
been
Facebook
good.
ads.
Do you have like your Monsters and WiseHire and Indeeds
So
on
I have
there?
Indeed, WiseHire, not Monster or Career Builder.
That whole genre.
Yeah, so I've got
It's been
Indeed
pretty
and
good.
WiseHire.
Okay.
I'll tell you, my best source since branching out into the EXP world with us and not having that brick and mortar to be able to pick off those agents, right, has been in WiseHire.
Okay, I mean I believe it because Indeed was pretty good for us too. I don't know why we ever got away from that. I just think there's like the raw volume of inquiries was actually too high, which, as I say, is a good thing.
I can tell you exactly why we end up getting away from it. Right there's not systems in place.
Yeah.
To nurture people from, hey, real estate sounds cool,
to
get all the way to get their license, then join a team.
So,
right?
but then you weren't running the right ad.
Well, and that's fair.
Yeah.
Right? Because you still will get that, But I will tell you that I'm probably sorting through 30 to 35% of those are people that are already licensed.
I would talk to a licensed agent any day of the week.
Yes, and so
any day of the week.
So, I actually talked to Justin Nelson about this, about bringing on a VA, because I run Wise Hire quite a bit, and having a VA sort through that, set up the calls.
See, that's a way to do it.
So if you're looking for the VA setup, right, the virtual assistant, you need to go to Justin Nelson right now at Sphere Rocket. So put the link in there.
Sphere Rocket. Okay.
It's not Sphere Rocket.
We did it wrong.
Did it wrong last time.
Okay, is it just SphereRocket.com? Justin, can you comment? Is it just SphereRocket.com?
Listening.
What happened to Sphere Rocket VA? That
I think
was
it's
the website.
SphereRocket.com.
Okay,
Wait, isn't it?
So
Isn't it supposed to be touracademy.com/VA? Is that the one I'm putting in?
Well, that's the webinar.
Oh, that's webinar.
If they want to watch
I don't even know the shit.
If you want to watch the webinar, you can go to touracademy.com
SphereRocket.com.
/VA.
Use code TOUR.
With that, you're going to learn how to get your virtual assistant. I mean, I have one at $3.50 an hour, you can have your VA become that recruiter.
Yep.
Right, where they're reaching out, setting up, maybe even doing the initial, asking a couple questions, and then from there it funnels it down to the next phase. Because the biggest hang up that most people have when it comes to joining that real estate team, their number one thing they want is leads.
Yes.
Yep.
Number two, the question is, what are your splits?
Yep.
Right? Even though we hate that question, it doesn't matter. When you answer that, they're immediately going to judge it right then and there.
Yes.
So you've got to have a program in place, because I've seen way too many teams that are way too inflated on their splits, and guess what? They're not profitable.
Doesn't make money, bro.
And you never think about profitability when you're hiring your first person, right? You just never do, right?
You just think the money's going to be there, bro.
Like, what kind of split do you want? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of nonsense thing.
And I know too many people, really quick, just to interject.
No, go ahead.
I know too many people who have a problem starting their own team because they're like, oh, I would never join a team and work for that split.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like,
you
would make more, like if you look at your dollar per hour average and your net and your take home, you actually net and take home more money on the right team. Even with where my splits are, my agents will make more money and net more money than the majority of teams out there.
I was spending 50% of my money on the business trying to keep it afloat and dealing with the stress of it. Agents have to stop looking at teams around splits and all these other things. How you need to look at it is the right team provides you with this amazing scaffolding, right? That extends into the clouds if you wanted to, right? And you are allowed to climb that as far as you want and take advantage of as many of those systems as you can for whatever that split is. And if you're the kind of agent who wants super hot leads, right? Or you're the kind of person who's offering super hot leads, guess what? You get even more for those, right? There's all these things that go into the business model. And whenever, to your point, whenever I hear somebody say, well, I would never charge somebody those splits because I never worked for them, then I would challenge you that your business isn't running at a high enough level for you to be starting a team. Because you should understand the amount of infrastructure it takes to run a team of any size. Like you were talking about, you're just trying to figure out how to stay on top of contracts. Like so many people be like, what a rough problem to have, Nick.
No, it actually fucking super is problem, actually.
Right? And I've now built this infrastructure to a point where we now have to figure out this whole other system. Right, like if you don't understand that those are going to be the types of problems you have to deal with growth, you're a little bit further behind in your thinking than you probably realize you are when it comes to starting a team.
And it definitely doesn't get easier. I mean, the problem that Matt was talking about that I brought up on the Tour Academy Mastermind call was I am way behind on my compliance docs. Right. In fact, I got another email today, and they're like,
"They're going to kick you."
Hey,
how far behind? Be specific.
I think from like October, November of
last
year.
From the year 2000.
But what I will say is
good reference.
We've never and what ended up happening is right now with COVID we thought we were catching up. Like our first quarter of 2020, we had a horrible first quarter.
Because like, man, if there's a silver lining to this global pandemic, I'm getting caught up on so much stuff.
I actually didn't even know. I didn't know until actually last week. And so from that, then it's like, all right, the next problem you have if your team is producing at a high level, it's going to break your systems. Yep. And then you're like, well, shit, now I've been doing this since 2009, this same system. Now I've got to go and recreate and make and streamline my process.
Well, those things become tougher to scale at some point too, because at the level that you're at, I mean, you're talking about extra personnel, which is like, it's not like it just increases a little. Like you're talking about bringing on or whatever, however you're going to solve it. I'm saying the fixes become more expensive.
Correct, absolutely,
in a big way.
But so we've got your current brokerage that you're with, Craigslist. You know, I'd rank it lower, but it's still an option, lower cost.
Where's this on the list? Because Matt just made a great point about Chauncey. How about the agents you're doing transactions with? If you're a legit producer, how weird would I mean, it sounds weird, but how different do you think your life would be if you just took every single agent you did a transaction with out to coffee?
Well, it just had any kind of a relationship with.
I mean, do you think you'd meet some knuckleheads for sure? But do you think you'd legitimately, over the course of 2 or 3 years, have a really, really good pool of people that are you're in communication with?
So,
for sure.
Yes, absolutely. But you've got to weigh your. Here's the thing: when I look at attracting or recruiting to my team, I need to look at my return on time, right? Because in the beginning, you still more than likely 99% of the time, you're still also the rainmaker on the team.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Right. So with that being said, you still have to be lead generating, right? You need to be following up. You need to be setting appointments. You need to be running appointments, right? Mm-hmm. Then you're probably also not. You may have an assistant. May just be using outsourcing to a transaction coordination service. So you're still handling that. So I'm going to look at it more from how can I attract people first. But what we've done and where we're looking at implementing, this is kind of using Justin Nelson's virtual assistant company as well, is that when an agent on the other side of the transaction submits an offer to us, or when if we're on the buy side and it's a listing agent, we input all that agent's information into our CRM. So we have
it's a good way to do it.
Probably
we
since,
have that now for
since
other
2009, we have every agent we've done a deal with in there. So what I could quickly turn on, which I have in here, is emailing agents and emailing them the same way that I email my database with videos.
See, like lead generation.
Yeah. So what we've looked at doing, and we've taken this kind of concept from viral marketing, is 2 to 3 videos a month to an agent email database list, and it's providing business building tactics. Right, strategies, tips.
Yeah.
And then in there, hey, if you want to pick my brain, let's have a pick my brain strategy session, and let's talk about business. Whether that ends up us, you coming to EXP just to come to EXP, whether that's you want to join the Good Home team, and that's what we are building out for.
Or whether you just think I'm a cool guy and you appreciate what we're doing, like that's cool too.
And it can lead to referrals.
Again,
I don't know how many local agents have actually sent us referrals because maybe they've had a pain in the ass clients, or we back in the day when short sales, we had more agents sending a short sale business as a referral, and we would just kick it back to them.
Yeah.
Right. So there is still those opportunities. We actually had a Fort Worth agent who referred us a listing out here because they didn't work the Dallas area,
and they still want to get their 25% or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. Here's the thing is, and especially for you, and again, this is sometimes we'll bring this all of a sudden into the room and not really talk to the people listening, but for the three of us, we now officially have 74 hours of content that we could chop up. That's us looking smart, talking about real estate in a pretty studio.
It's a lot of production that goes into making us look smart,
right? Yeah. That essentially could be used for that exactly what you're talking about, right? Like, if you have access to that, then use those types of things. Use panels you've been on. Use podcasts you've been on. Social proof for those types of things. When it comes to a recruiting standpoint, there's so much that I use my social media for, just besides to show people pictures of my kids. It's reminding people that I'm fucking good at what I do.
I think that, and if you don't have that, I would ask you why not. Right? Yeah. A webcam and a microphone, and you've got the ability to put content out there for sure. So that's a big thing too.
Here's another one, and this is, and I haven't done it in 2 years because I dropped the ball. Right? So this was I sent out an email to my database saying we were hiring, we're looking for agents, and for people to respond back and set up a time for call, right, and just have a conversation. Now, of course, we got a lot of response with people that were not licensed and needed to go through schooling. but I'd never reached back out to them because that was that month that I went down with the gallbladder issues, and then then I came back, and then I got flu and everything else.
He no longer looked like the picture on his Nick Good car when he came back from
right.
That's right. That's
when are you going to get that changed?
Never.
No, just leave it. It's got to be too much to rewrap that thing. Plus, like honestly, what we're talking about, nobody even sees him anymore.
How much does it cost to wrap a little smart car like that?
It's like $3,000.
Oh, that's way more than that. That's way more than I thought for a car that size. All right, leave it. Yeah.
So I'm definitely going to leave it. And look, just like my old business cards, I used to hand out my old business cards, and they're like, "Ooh, look like you," and it's a conversation piece. Right?
I'm gonna get my middle school picture on my business card.
Just you crying, Batman not talking to you at a birthday party.
But your database is a huge one, because here's the other thing: if more than likely, if they don't know the real estate business, they're not coming in and questioning the splits right out of the gate.
That's true.
Right?
That's fair.
And then from there, you're able to get them into your system, and then they understand.
Is there any part of you that does like bringing on somebody who's already been selling, though? Because here's my one thing with new agents, and I think I would have fallen into this same trap because I was recruited by teams. I mean, dude, we talked, right? Like, I was the same agent, like, splits, man. Right? Like, I'm super awesome at this
Which
job.
was funny because that was right before you joined Hurricane, and the splits were relatively the same.
They would have been, right? But, like, we wouldn't be here if we had done that.
Yeah,
so.
right.
But, like, there is a new agent aspect that I'm always concerned that an agent who hasn't tried to do it on their own then joins a team is under this misconception that they can do it on their own the exact same way they've been doing it, right? And then they leave, and then pride keeps them from coming back.
Yeah.
When they go out there and real estate ends up kicking their ass because it's not as easy when you don't have all these systems, and they're not as easy to replicate and all those types of things. Like, is there any part? Of course, we'd all rather recruit people who are producing $3-4 million a year and slide them right in and turn them into 6, 8, 10, right?
Sure.
Like that's the ideal thing. But like, is there any part of you in the years that you've done this that have seen anything to the contrary? Because I think you do a really good job of bringing on people who have zero experience, creating loyalty, and getting them into production.
So that's what I like, right?
Yeah.
I like to build my own minor league system and then turn them into the pros, right? Because from that, if they've already think they're in the pro league levels, and you're like, well, actually you weren't.
Sure.
Now you're taking them down a peg, and it doesn't always fare well.
It doesn't.
I mean, we've had producing agents join us, leave us, and then rejoin us, and then leave us again. Yeah. And right. I mean, that's just something that we just have come to acceptance on. Right. What we have looked at, I think there may be only one person now that has actually at their height with us has actually replicated that on their outside on their own. Yeah. Right. And so, not that I wear that with pride, but I'm like, again, there's a reason why our successful agents, are with us for as long as they are. Yeah, don't leave. And there's a reason why when people leave, their business drops off.
And I will say this, man, and I think a general advice for somebody looking to start a team out of all the different strategies we talk about, kind of coming at it with some humility is really important, only because a lot of the different strategies that we talk about, especially when we talk about bringing on new agents and just having the infrastructure to grow them and coach them up, I will tell you from me as a leader, what I spend most of my day doing is helping people through stuff that I went through years ago, right? And I think somebody with a little bit of hubris that comes into that, it's going to really burn them out in the same way that any sort of entrepreneurial sort of endeavor burns you out after a while. Understand that as a leader, if you're really trying to build a team, you're going to spend a lot of time helping and coaching and guiding people and helping them further their careers in a way that might be very, very mind-numbing to you, in the sense that you're like, why don't you fucking know this already? You know what I mean? Like, there's going to be a lot of that. And so I think that, like, you've got to be willing to just go through the shit, in the sense that, like, if you've built a big enough business that you're ready to start a team, you kind of already have a little sense about you that you know what's up, you know what you're doing, you're ready to go, and then you kind of have to take a little bit of a conversational step back a lot, and you spend a lot of your time doing stuff that you would not otherwise have done if you weren't building a team. I stopped at the gas station today to get my Red Bull. And it was
I saw you with one. I haven't seen your Red Bull.
I know. And it was the same gas station where I used to leave the office, and I'd buy stamps there. And I bought stamps there because we would stamp our own yellow letters that would go out for investments. And we'd stamp 2,000 of them a week. Me and this lady would stay up all night. We had to go through 4 different printers in like a year because we'd burn them out because it was faster. It was cheaper that way. So we'd do them all ourselves. We'd stick them or whatever. We don't do that anymore. But it kind of reminded me of the thought. I had that thought when I was standing in line. I was like, remember when we used to do that? That was so crazy. Yeah. It's kind of the same thing with building a team. You'll think back after a while, like, remember when I used to do this, or remember when I used to do that? What I'm trying to make is you just, from a mindset standpoint, you really need to humble yourself, I think, and get into that leadership mindset. And part of having that leadership mindset is I'm helping people come from where I was to hopefully be to where I am and want to go, and I want to bring them along with me. But that involves going back to where you were very often.
So as we wrap this up, I feel like Brian just gave his one thing. If you're getting ready to start this, like, be humble, understand that you have a lot to learn, right? That kind of stuff. If somebody's thinking about doing this, what is the one thing that you're like, be sure?
Be sure that you're not. Here's my thing. I have a big problem with teams about cherry picking deals.
Yeah.
I hear it way too much. I mean, Brian and I know a team in particular, right? And I have a really big issue with that. It's that to me is you can't be selfish. You need to be selfless when building this team. It's no longer about you. It's about your team members.
Yep.
And that if you're not ready for that, then don't build it. Just be an individual. It's fine. There's no pressure. I think the
ton of money doing that too.
There's a pressure in the industry to build teams.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And too many brokerages that we all know. It looks like it's all going team route, and that's what they say. It's like the individual agent's dying. Well, the individual agent still, if they're done correctly with the right systems, is making a shit ton more money.
Absolutely.
Right? And maybe even less headache.
I'll say we all know a lot of broke team leaders for sure.
Yes, 100%. And so it's the one thing that I would say is that you have to be ready to stop being selfish and be selfless,
yeah,
right?
100%.
And we need to talk about the training part.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have your training down, right, and this
That's
is
a whole other show that I don't know if people would sit on for, but man, there's so much that, like, I realize goes into that now, because I was that team leader who did not have any training, any understanding of how to do it.
That's
right?
my biggest that holds me back from actually bringing on more team members.
Sure.
Because I think
it does us too.
It does too. Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
about the painstaking process of training.
Yeah.
Right, because when you're training somebody, right, when you hire someone, you're like, yes. You got them to agree. They're seeing the value there. Maybe it's the leads.
Yeah.
Maybe they just want the leads and they can, okay, great. But then they come and if they see that your training's a shit show, right? And for a while, our training, we were replicating other people's stuff. We would have like these requirements in the beginning that would, first off, if you had those requirements, if I was on someone else's team, I wouldn't even be able to hit.
Yep.
Like, we just were all over the place.
Yep. And I'll tell you, just to speak to, I might be biased just to speak to my strengths here a little bit, but I think one of the biggest hiccups with the training aspect of it is you kind of feel when you first starting a team, like every time you train someone, like this is some sort of means to an end, and you don't document and then build systems around it. You know what I mean? Like you just bring people on and they're like, I'll just sit for you with a week, or I'll just sit with you for a week for 8 hours a day and train you up and you'll be good. Like, yeah, you'd have to do that less if you document it, put it into modules, built it up, you know what I mean? Like that's a very painstaking process in and of itself. But I feel like the average sort of team leader loses so much ground in the beginning because they're kind of doing it on a one-off basis. If you start with that training mindset of how do I start from day one to take the experiences that I'm going to have for the next year in building this team, document it all, and then leverage that out to bring people on, that makes it easier. It makes it only a little easier, though. It's still tough.
That was going to ultimately be my advice, because I think the one thing that I've learned in just with Danny, my assistant, right?
Yeah.
If you are thinking right now, like, man, it'd be super sweet to build a team in the next 12 months, get a free freaking Zoom account and start recording yourself doing every damn annoying thing you do. And I'm talking about setting up showings. I'm talking about entering a listing and just start getting this catalog of things. Because what I will say, hiring agents, look, agents are a dime a dozen on the lower level, right? I very easily, just like I could go get 50 Facebook leads who would never answer their phone.
Yeah.
I could go get 20 agents who will never sell a house right now.
100%.
Right? Like that's not a problem.
That's one social media post.
Exactly. The difficulty thing is one, hiring some of the infrastructure you're going to need to support actually good agents, right? And leveraging off some of this stuff, because to Nick's point about 10 or 15 minutes ago, you are still going to have to be the engine for this team. Make no mistake about it. You're going to do two jobs for a little bit.
Yes.
You're signing up to work long, hard hours. And if you just think that you're immediately going to hire somebody and you're going to take a step back, I can assure you that is not what it's going to be.
You're going to make less money.
You're definitely going to make less money.
Less money.
Going to make less money.
I will tell you, even today, we have our stuff recorded, and it's still I still have problems with the recorded trainings.
I have problems getting people to watch it.
That's the
Just get them
thing,
to
right?
watch it, yeah.
So here's what I built out, right? So this is what I changed, and this was because of COVID.
Okay.
Because here's what I'll tell you beforehand: we had the videos, I never used it.
Am I the only one? It's a quick sidebar. I didn't mean to interject. Am I the only one that anytime someone says COVID, I want to do the what's the preacher? Kenneth Copeland. I just want to go COVID-19. Oh my gosh! Have you not seen that video that he? It's hilarious.
Show it to me. But
sure.
that's so beforehand. What I would do is I'd meet one-on-one, right, and we would get them all set up, and it was a painstaking process. Even though we had it all recorded, because they wouldn't do it. Now, if they want to get in front of me, they want leads. In fact, I hired a team member. She didn't do it, so she never officially came on.
Yeah.
She's still at the brokerage, but we locked her out of the system. Like
We've got somebody like that right now.
and that's the thing.
Exactly.
So it's now a test to see, all right, I need to make sure that you've got to watch your Boomtown training videos, right? Once you go through that, I can see when you actually watch them, right? And then I can see when the rest of this stuff, and then the next part in that video says, hey, let me know when you've completed these, reach out to me. Then we can sit down and talk about our rules of the pipeline. And we can talk about the leads. Right,
Nick's getting them.
Will you take a note of that for me? I need to, before we even do goal setting or anything, I need you to watch the modules in the Google Drive and then send me an email to do goal setting.
Nick's doing the old end around that always murdered me in middle school and high school, where the directions at the top of the page say, if you read these directions, put your pencil down and do not take the test.
take the test.
I'm the person just furiously answering questions. I run up there and turn it. I'm like, look at all these dumb
nailed it.
bitches. Haven't even gotten out of their chair yet.
But
I look like a freaking circus monkey.
Oh my god!
But with that, I will say that then we've customized our training. It's never the same. Like the guy that we brought on today, like he has ISA experience. He has buyer's agent already experience. I don't need to go through as in depth, right? Now I need to hear what I have to hear him make some calls.
Sure,
I've got to hear how it is, and then we tweak.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing. Most people just want to set it and forget it. And it's not like that. We're going to tweak. We're going to, just like Nate today, Nate Fisher, 21 years old, 10 under contract with us.
For him.
Brent,
he's crushing it. You've kind of been documenting him a little bit on the show, shouting him out every once in a while. That's pretty impressive.
Yes, he is. And here's the thing with him. Even today, he's making calls and I'm yelling through the glass, from my office, like, say this, right? And then we're going to change our wording.
Ask open-ended questions.
Yes. And that's the thing with that. And then you go in and start doing with your Zoom call trainings with the rest of the team and say, this is what we're experiencing.
And I think that goes back to documenting too, because it works on two levels. One, the documentation helps you train up, and also holds other people accountable, because when you start to get questions about stuff that is in the training, you start to get a beat on all right, here's where people are really falling off. You know what I mean? Then you can kind of adjust your stuff a little bit to be like, this is a little bit more efficient. But that's kind of how I kind of figure out which of our training modules are working, and kind of how the system works is I'm getting 14 questions a week about repair amendments. I really need to go shore that up, or they're just not watching it, right? And then I can go see if they were watching it. So
and they weren't watching it.
They weren't watching it.
Yeah.
Most of the time they weren't watching it.
Boys, I didn't think we were going to fill an hour with that, but we most certainly did.
We super did.
So I've got this new thing
Okay.
we're going to do.
Oh, boy.
Uh-oh.
And it's not that bad. It's not even really super
We
profound.
need to come up with a Brian's Billionaire Idea intro
Not
for
even
it.
that. No, it's just the new way to take us out. Because here's the thing: is out of respect to Derek,
Yeah.
I want him to stay in.
Yes.
From a sound perspective.
Oh.
So this is an audio situation. But I also think it's important to respect the person who currently flip flops the camera for us.
That
and does all
is
this
true.
stuff. So are you guys ready for this?
I should ask her. Is she ready to hit the transition button?
Lady, take us out.
Hey, thank you for watching. We truly appreciate it, checking out another episode of the Only Real Estate Podcast Worth Listening To. If you're watching this on YouTube, please go ahead, hit that share button, hit that like button, and hit the subscribe button. Right? We're dropping more stuff on YouTube constantly. If you're on iTunes, leave us a review, please. We're really, really focused on building up those reviews so we can get more searchable content on there. And if you're on Facebook, like everyone else is, go over and search the only real estate group worth being a part of. You're going to want to go join that group. I'm telling you right now, there's so much gold in there. So go join, share us on YouTube, and leave us that iTunes review, please. Go do it right now. We'll see you on the next show.